In a world of increasing mental health challenges, psychology and faith can both provide tools for healing and wellness. This is the idea behind Journey on My Mind. Each episode, our panel of pastors and therapists sit down together to share their experiences and insights on the modern world's mental health issues: depression, loneliness, aging, addiction, and so much more. Join us now as we explore what it means to thrive at the complex intersection of spirit and psychology.
All right, welcome to another Journey on My Mind. That one was better than the first one. Yeah. And we are here with our full crew. Yeah. It is great to see all of you. This is the podcast, if you're wondering, where spirituality and psychology collide.
All the magic happens.
All the magic happens.
Yeah.
And you can find us all over the place. And we are starting to get more of this out, and we would like you to share it with other people if you find it helpful. And if you don't find it helpful, just leave it alone. No. And we find ourselves in, interesting times at the moment, and a lot of uncertainty, and we talked about that previously. So one of the questions we want to try and wrestle with today is, how do resilient people respond to hard times? Or what does resiliency mean in hard times? How do we wrestle with that idea of resiliency? But before we do that, I just want to explain to you why I sound like I'm in a phone booth.
A phone booth?
I feel like I'm in a phone booth.
It's the weather.
It is my allergies have decided to take over my head.
Yes.
And I apologize. And I do believe Lauren is in my camp.
I am. It's unpleasant.
It is unpleasant.
Yeah.
And I try not to take a lot of medication this morning so I could think.
Yeah.
And
how's that working?
And not good.
Yeah.
And not good. Not just as bad as I think if I would have. So if I say something sounds kind of off, I'm blaming it
on the cold.
On the allergies.
On the allergies.
Yes,
Right.
I am. And
what about all the other days?
Nope, that I can't.
No
this
excuse,
is well, yeah. There might have been other.
You
days.
get one pass.
One pass. One pass. All right. Well, any small talk you want to do today besides those fun things?
We are off to a great start.
We are. I just wanted to explain.
I think we just dive right in.
We dive in. I think that's true because this topic actually is in the forefront of many people's minds. Resiliency is difficult, especially if it doesn't feel like there's hope on the horizon. Yeah. So, Dave, do you want to outline this for us? Would you?
Sure.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the concept of resilience and what it is and what it looks like for people, and then how to be more of it. And that's one of the cool things about resilience is that there's some people by nature tend to be a little more hardy or resilient, but anybody can become more resilient. It's kind of like working out, right? There's some people, the way they're built by nature is pretty sturdy and strong, and then other people can get there, but they might have to work at it. So that's the same thing with resilience. Okay. So resilience is just basically, simply said, it's the ability to bounce back after hardship. It's the ability to go through something difficult and come out of it not just okay, but sometimes even stronger. Resilient people are really good at taking difficult times and using them for good. Which is hopefully where we'll get to today.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Anything to add to that, Lauren, with your head full of?
No, you did a great job outlining. I'm with you. I'm ready.
Okay. So a point of clarification.
Yeah.
From the peanut gallery over here. I think I heard you said that it's similar to being. So there's some genetics involved in this. You think?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's for all human attributes, there's usually some genetic component.
Yeah.
Just like physical.
Yeah, that's the example you use, and I was like, I don't know if I would. Yeah, because I know people who are physically sturdy souls.
Right.
And some that are frail.
Yeah.
And it feels like they inherited that from
absolutely
somebody.
Yeah, and so there are personality traits that we call resilient traits or resilient personality traits that some people just are predisposed to more than others.
That's awesome.
They're
like, partially genetically, but maybe partially too from the family they grew up in and what they saw modeled and
right. So it usually, like most personality traits, is a little bit of kind of how you're wired and a little bit of your life experience mashed together.
Okay.
And that sort of produces that. But let's say you're not as prone to being resilient. the good news is that that's not just the bad hand you're dealt.
Right.
Right. It's not like, well, sorry, you're just a really fragile
just stuck.
flower.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
You're
about it.
stuck,
Yeah.
baby. Yeah, that's rough.
That's good.
Okay.
And to go back to a point you made is one of the things we want to do is talk about resiliency during difficult times because we're in times that feel very polarized, very contentious, a lot of rancor, a lot of stuff going on.
Hyperbole.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
and people are feeling it. I mean, the rates of anxiety disorders among teens and young adults, and even into adulthood, are up by double digits in the past decade or so.
Wow.
So people are
Feeling it.
feeling
Sure.
it. And so before we talk about that, I actually want to throw something out.
Okay.
You guys don't have to agree with this.
Okay.
But
Okay, we won't.
I think we typically right now are not as resilient a people as we used to be. That's a premise I'm going to throw out.
Okay.
Would you agree with that, just observationally, or would you dispute that?
Oh, I got to think on that.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking too. I think I would probably agree with that, Dave.
This
Is
is
it maybe-
subjective, so I don't have a conclusion to say this study.
No, I'm
says
just
this
trying to
thing, but
think about like when I
Just
think
through
about
anecdotal evidence of
my
being
life,
around
yeah.
people.
I'm not even saying this panel of people. I'm
Totally,
saying,
just
I'm
in-
saying the kind of
Yeah.
we're by and large not as resilient as we
Right.
were in the past.
Yeah, because
Right.
yes, I would say that's true. I think there was a stark change after the turn of the century. But I know
The
that
turn of
sounds
this past century.
really old. But
into
yes,
the 2000s.
You're
Yes.
not talking about the 1900s.
I'm not. I think certain things happened at the beginning of the 2000s that set people into an uncertain state.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Lauren, what do you think? You look like
Yeah.
you dispute me.
No,
Which is
I-
great.
no.
I like the disputation.
No, I'm not disputing you. I think what we like, there's maybe a good side of the coin too, right? Like if I'm thinking about a long time ago and people going through really horrific things and being very resilient to that, it's like, wow, that's amazing. But they also might not have been as like emotionally aware as we
Right.
are, or I think there are probably some
a
strengths
trade-off.
of this. Yeah,
Definitely. Definitely true.
Yeah, I think, and again, anecdotes are just whatever they are. They're anecdotes. But I think I've told this story before, but my father-in-law had 2 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars. He got wounded in 2 separate wars.
Wow.
Didn't even go to the second Purple Heart ceremony because they already had one.
I don't need another.
And
Wow.
in the Korean War, he was in a tank that ran over a landmine.
Wow.
In the Vietnam War, he was in a base camp that got mortar attacked, and he got shrapnel lacerated so bad he was in the hospital for 60 days.
Unbelievable.
And so after he retired from the military, he ran a Christmas tree farm
There it is.
up in the mountains of North Carolina.
There it is.
And of course, he inherited me as a son-in-law, which is he pulled the short straw on this because I am not helpful
I don't know about that.
at all.
Maybe for the tree
My
farm.
brother would go out there and help him, but I would not help.
Right,
him.
right, right.
And I hear him. I'm inside the house playing video games, and I hear the chainsaws going. All of a sudden, the chainsaw stops,
And
door opens up. He comes in. His leg is split open, blood everywhere, and he goes, "It's the first time I cut my leg with a dang chainsaw."
well,
And then he goes
at
to
least
the
it's the first time.
Yes, he goes to the back room, comes back 10 minutes later with a new pair of jeans, fires up the chainsaw. Probably didn't think about it again.
Yep.
And if that had happened to me, I'd never get over
Yep.
it. Never. Every conversation would be characterized by
Started
me talking about it.
with
Start with,
that.
did you
That's
know
right.
that I cut
Yeah,
my
yeah,
leg
yeah,
off
yeah.
with a chainsaw?
That is that resiliency or is that something else?
Well, it's part of resilience.
Okay.
It's like that tough-mindedness.
Yeah.
because I think you're very tough-minded when it comes to stress management.
I am,
and
yeah.
so, like you're very resilient in those ways. But like if you had to sleep overnight one night in like a tent,
Right,
you
I
would,
couldn't
like,
do it.
be- I don't know.
Resiliency takes lots of different forms.
Right.
Okay.
That's funny.
Right.
That's funny.
So I know we're kind of using it as an example,
Yeah.
but it does feel like the way that you build muscle is by doing
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that is hard and you have to push against resistance. And the way that you build emotional muscle is that you go through hard things and you push through that. And I feel like what the downside of being in a culture that's pretty safe and comfortable and wealthy and affluent is that we haven't faced a lot of difficulty. And then when it starts, And
Yep.
I think turn of the century is a good marker point.
Yeah.
Maybe a little before that, but certainly from that point on.
Well, the vulnerability came very apparent in Y2K.
Yeah.
I saw fear throughout the constituency. That sounds like a political, but
vote for Kevin.
yeah, it was pretty widespread fear.
Absolutely.
And then Y2K, and then 9/11 happened, and then we realized, oh, this bubble we live in is
It
penetrable.
shook it up, yeah.
Yeah, it really shook the globe to its core, the snow globe.
Right. And so part of what resiliency is I'm not sure you can become super resilient without going through difficulty.
Right.
You know, maybe just by nature you're a little more sturdy, but part of resiliency is going through difficult things and facing disappointment, facing hardship, facing difficulty, and kind of pushing through it.
Yeah.
And some of my concern about some of the current like parenting models, we talked about gentle parenting,
Yeah.
is there's a tendency to shield kids from
Yeah,
consequences and hardship
Yeah.
and
yeah,
hurt feelings and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, which if we kind of cast that ahead, it's not going to do us any favors
Yeah.
with resiliency.
no doubt. Yeah, gentle
so
parenting
true.
wasn't part of my understanding as a child.
Right.
Yeah.
That was not the language that they used.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
of course, there's a good side to parents that are tuned in and kind and emotionally sensitive and all that. There's a good side to it. But I think it's what we're wrestling with is, are we out of balance?
Yeah, that was I was going to ask. It's something that it feels like it's a balance question.
Let's
Right.
go
in a lot
down
of
that
ways,
path on
right?
another. Let's go down gentle parenting.
Yeah.
You know.
Which we've
Yeah, we
we've
have it
hit
on
on,
the
but-
schedule.
Yeah. So that's kind of the backdrop. So let's talk about what resilient people look like, and then let's talk about how to become more resilient.
Yeah.
Before I go on, do you have anything to add to it? Okay. So a couple of traits of resilient people. They tend to be realistically optimistic. In other words, they're not cynical. They're not pessimistic, but they're also not naive.
Right.
They tend to be optimistic, realistically. Now, let me pause. I'm not trying to make this like a class, but
Yeah.
why would that relate to resilience? Why is optimism a
I mean,
important part of
because I
resilience?
believe there's something on the other side of this.
Right.
Like I can get through it. You
There's
know,
hope.
like there's there's
still-
hope. Yeah.
Yeah, you still have a sense of hope,
Something
expectation of
beyond.
something good.
I mean, that's my immediate.
No, that's huge. So think about that. If you don't have that, then how do you push through the hard stuff if you don't think there's something possibly better on the other side of it, or that you can get stronger if you push through it, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that sense of hopefulness and optimism,
Quit.
then you're going to quit.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
So one trait is optimism, realistic optimism.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool.
Then
I wonder if realistic optimism is somehow attached to our history as people. Like the longer I live, the more realistic optimism
Oh.
I have.
do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, huh? I'm
Dave's
going
like,
in the
are
other
you
direction.
serious?
No, go.
Yeah, that's
Explain that.
interesting.
Well, it gives perspective over many years of momentary stupidity, of momentary of times that are. I feel like.
Yeah.
No, I'm not that. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
You are
Yeah.
old.
I am old. I'm older than you. But
Not of me.
Yes, I am older than you.
We'll pick this up later.
Okay. A little. Anyway, all that to say this is that I look back and I go, oh, this happened before. This has happened before.
It gives you perspective,
Right.
kind of longitudinal. You don't get lost in the just
right, it's like
now
when
is a bunch of dumb stuff happening and
Right.
it's permanent.
Right. It's just not.
I think maybe it's a similar process, but I think I was born an optimist. Like I just
think
saw
you were.
the world.
No
like,
doubt.
it was just wide open in so many ways. But then as I've aged, like I think realistic understanding around that has probably tempered some of that too. You know,
Sure,
so
but you've come back to the middle,
yeah,
and I've come from the other side.
yeah. That's interesting.
But to go back to a point we said earlier, that's probably how you were wired, right?
Yeah,
That was just day one.
Yes,
you just came out.
What's the adventure?
Right.
Let's go.
What's
Yeah.
right. So that primes you to be more optimistic, which primes you to be more resilient. Yeah.
This makes me think about people who are depressed. When we look at what are the ways that they're thinking that might be amplifying their depression, two of them, one is called focusing on the negative, and the other one is called disqualifying the positive. So like when you're really depressed, you're sort of focusing only on the negative things that are happening. But then when something good does happen, you somehow make it not count. Like, oh, of course they said I'm pretty. They had to. Or of course I made a good grade in this class. Everyone's making the good grade. And the reason that breeds a lot of depression is like it breeds a lot of hopelessness.
Yes.
If I don't ever let the good in, and when good does happen, I make it not count, you can get really depressed.
You called that disqualifying
the positive.
Disqualifying the positive.
And so when we
I'm gonna use that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good phrase.
Yeah.
I meet a lot of people like that.
It's hard to be resilient when you feel very hopeless, so we try to shift people not into a Pollyanna mindset of like everything is good, but we really try to shift them into, well, let's talk about the reality of what's happening and let's look at the good and the bad. And I think that has to do a lot with this kind of realistic optimism.
Yeah.
One of the things about depression too that's part of that is that when people get depressed, they think they see the world with absolute clarity. That's almost a hallmark of depression. It's like they see this is bad and these things aren't good, and now I see it as it is. Right? So it's not just like, oh, I've got a filter and I'm looking at the world through this depressed lens. It's like, oh, now I really see it.
Yeah.
This is real. And so that makes it even more difficult because they trust that their perception is not just a filter, it's reality.
It's the story.
Yeah.
Wow.
So realistic optimism is that. I'm going to hit some stuff just
we'll
bullet points. No, it's great. But we can extend this too.
Okay. Yeah, we can.
But I'll hit bullet points quick, and then I want to linger on a few other ones.
Okay.
More resilient people have higher emotional intelligence, which means three things. I understand what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, and I know how to manage it. Those three components. That's emotional intelligence. They tend to have greater self-efficacy, which is a belief that they can overcome things or be competent to do things. They often have better sense of humor. So got that going for us. And then
if you can't laugh at it, it's going to be rough.
Yeah. And they tend to be more growth-minded, which we've talked about in the past year before. But a couple things I just want to highlight is resilient people also tend to be more mentally flexible. This is a big thing. And this is actually part of what Lauren's talking about is when people are not resilient, they get really rigid.
Kind of locked in that one way.
It's got to be this way or that way, or it's all this or it's all that. It's very kind of rigid thinking.
Binary?
It's binary, and it's hard to move it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's like a very fixed set of ideas or assumptions or beliefs or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have anything to add. No, what are you asking?
So
me?
no,
I'm just nodding.
I was giving it to you. Lauren's like, my head's full of snot.
Just out of curiosity, I find that when I meet with people that have a very fixed, I'm going to use it, mindset.
Yeah.
That
mentally rigid people.
Okay, let's go with mentally rigid.
Because those are similar, but they're a little different. Mentally rigid people are people that's like, this is the way it is, or should be,
but
or has to be.
It seems like, to me, facts don't matter in those conversations.
Yeah.
They totally disregard facts that would clearly disprove their theory or their mindset.
Yeah.
And they go, that it doesn't matter. I can't take that in at times and go, what do you mean it doesn't matter? What you're saying isn't true. So move a position, would you?
Yeah.
That's where I want to go.
Yeah.
But and then I realize they can't.
Yeah.
There's something that's keeping them from doing that.
I'm curious, from a spiritual perspective, Dave mentioned self-efficacy, like this belief that I can change things. I have the ability to change the outcome of my situation. When you see people who have a certain kind of theology where they feel like they don't have any control and things are just happening, I could see how that could be helpful in some ways. But do you ever see that get to a place where you feel like, man, this is kind of emotionally unhealthy or...
Yeah, Yeah, say that one more time. I'm
like
trying to
people who might
understand
believe
that.
more in like not just predestination, but that every single part of my life
Okay.
is planned and
Sovereignty of
predetermined.
God.
And
Sovereignty of God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, tell me about how you would see that maybe affecting resiliency, or maybe it doesn't, but.
Wow, that's an interesting question. Kev, what do you
Oh,
got any thoughts?
It for sure does.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for, usually it's
a great
couched in,
question.
what's God's
Yeah.
will for my life?
Yes.
Or how do I know what God's will is? Because there's a fear attached to that. The fear attached to that is I'm going to do something I'm not outside of God's will. And we know what happens to people when you do something out of God's will. And so they stay in paralysis. They stay in a place until they know, like, it's like they're waiting for a postcard.
Well,
or
there's a bit like the religious sometimes is like, well, some, just using that kind of ideas. Some are made for destruction and some are made, so there's nothing I can do to change.
Right.
Like there's some were chosen, some, you know, so that kind of.
He knows the numbers of my days.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't
So
mean
nothing
anything.
that we do or
Yeah.
it has
Right.
Yeah.
it's impactful, but it's not. It's
Yeah, and they discount the true humanness in us of we have moral agency. We can choose. We were created that way. Part of God's image in us is the capacity to choose. There isn't another creature on the planet that really has the capacity that
not in the same way.
Not in the same way to make a good choice or not good choice. And with that comes both good and bad, right? And sometimes even making the right choice becomes the wrong choice because I'm not sure it's God's will.
Yeah.
So it's paralyzing.
Right.
That's a good word for it.
That's good. One more thing I'll say is that resilient people are really good at coping. And so they have good coping skills. And there are some skills that are like behavioral things, like I work out or like I work out.
Yeah.
I don't mean
I'm
work
glad
out.
you do.
Not me personally.
I don't
just to
mean
be clear.
personally.
Yeah, just go for a walk with your dog.
Go for a walk or you hang out
Yeah.
with people but then a lot of coping skills are playing the mental game better. It's the ability to think well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you can get good at that, and that's a big part of our job, is like how do you help people think better?
Yeah.
Play the mental game better, reframe something better.
Yeah.
Right.
So you actually hit on something earlier when you were talking about being very elderly and
Thank you.
and having
Appreciate
the perspective but that actually, believe it or not, is a reframing because you have you're able to say,
See, I didn't know that word at the time, so now I have a new word.
right,
I reframe it.
This is not all there is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? There's more. It's a bigger story. There's a bigger arc to it. That's
sure.
a reframe.
Yeah.
But anytime you're able to take a situation that's distressing to you and think about it better, then that's not only a great way of coping, but that's a way of being more resilient. The way to think about it better, the criteria that I would say are two things. If you're having thoughts that are distressing or you're in a situation where it's just overwhelming to you, the thought should be both true and helpful. That's the criteria.
True and helpful.
Right, true and helpful. They can't just be wishful. They can't just be, something like a nice positive thought.
Right.
It's not the power of positive thinking.
That's right.
It's something that's like, it's true and it's helpful.
Do you feel like part of resiliency, I know this is not necessarily included in your notes, but is asking for help? Because I feel like when you are stuck and maybe you don't naturally think around, what's another way to see this, but like asking for help from somebody trusted, do you think that's part of it?
I have a great answer for that, I think.
Maybe.
I do. So a friend of mine named Robert Brooks, who is a psychologist, he's at Harvard and he's written a bunch of books on resiliency. He's one of the OGs of resiliency.
Okay.
And he
Bobby
has
Brooks.
done research where he looks at resilient people and interviews them and finds out how do they think? What are their mindsets? And everything you think about a resilient person is true. Like they take responsibility for their own actions rather than put it on other people. They make hopeful plans. They, all those kinds of things. The one thing that was different is that the most resilient people are more likely to ask for help and support. Not the same or less. They're more. Like we have this American notion of being a tough-minded person that we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, that we kind of do this all on our own.
Individualism is king.
Right. And there is something to be said for having a belief that I can get through something. That's self-efficacy.
Yeah.
But resilient people ask for help. And so if it's a first responder or a military person that's gone through a difficult time, or you name it, the ones that do better tend to be the ones that let other people in and let them help them.
Yeah, that
That's
makes sense.
a great question. I'm so
That's
glad
a
we
really
hit that
great.
point.
Yeah, it keeps them from getting burned out, prolongs their longevity, in the field, and if they can.
Well, it's funny. 'Cause I think that's one of the ways that I've learned is to ask, because optimistically, I think I can do it all, or I can figure it out, and but you end up spinning your wheels and be frustrated at times too in that. And so it's been really beautiful to learn how to ask. Yeah, it's great.
My own thoughts will betray me.
Yes.
Like in my moments of this is bad, but then my solution to what I've encountered, the problem or whatever has set me down that motion, oftentimes needs to be written on a piece of paper and spoke out loud to some other person, because in my mind it made sense. It really did.
Yeah.
This seems like the right path. And then to say it to somebody, I've done this with you, Sam.
Yeah.
I've said, hey, I've done it with Dave.
Yeah.
I've said, what do you think of this? And you go, I don't think so, Ken. or there are times when people go, yeah, that sounds
right.
like the right direction.
Yeah.
But until I bring it to the light, it's merely a good idea or a bad idea.
A potential idea.
Yeah, it's just, and sometimes they're just awful.
Yeah. And so resilient people can reframe thoughts and ask other people for support like that. But
Right.
what's interesting, not just bouncing things off of them, but when you study resilient people, they're the ones that are like, okay, let's say they're an athlete. They're like, all right, I'm having trouble with my my catching game or my batting game. Who's the best batting coach I can find?
Right.
Who's the best sports
Yeah.
psychologist I can find? Who's the best? Or if it's someone that's struggling in a certain area, they're always sort of like trying to find who's somebody that really knows their stuff that can help me,
Yeah.
rather than I'm just gonna hunker down and do this on my
White
own.
knuckle.
I love
Yeah.
that part of resiliency is curiosity in that
Yeah,
sense.
it is very.
It's
It's
also interdependence.
Yeah.
What you're shooting for there is
right.
interdependence.
And so, just to kind of clarify this last point, and then we'll go,
Okay.
is resilient people do have a sense of self-efficacy, which means not I do it all on my own, but I believe I can get through it.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
I believe there not only is a path forward, but I have some sense of trust in myself to kind of
Yes.
whether it's to pull people in, to trust in God, whatever the path is, they believe they can do that.
Yeah.
But in practice, it almost always involves a reaching out and
Right.
allowing
It's really
others
good.
Yeah.
outside of themselves to help
Great
them.
reminder.
And Dave, this is where spirituality and psychology overlap.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
almost locking hands.
Yeah, right.
Is because we're part of a community so that we can help each
That's
other.
right.
And so that we can get the need we want and we can get clarification. And if the community is safe, if the community is vulnerable, if it's doing the things that reflect the kingdom of God, respect each other's, humanity, and invite them in. Even when the questions are like, I really wouldn't do that. There is an opportunity to be a part of a community that would say, we can shepherd this in a different way. We can go a different way with this. You don't have to end there. And I think that's where spirituality really and God engages us this way, I believe. In the most practical sense, God engages us through other people.
Absolutely.
It's good.
So there's more to say here, but
Yeah, we'll pick it up next
we'll
time.
pick it up again.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back on this. We're out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Journey on My Mind. If you enjoyed it, please help us spread the word by leaving us a review and sharing it on your social media. Journey on My Mind is a production of Journey Church in Brentwood, Tennessee. Edwin Rivera III is the show's producer with technical assistance from Randy Hansen. Grant Opperman edits the show. If you have a suggestion for a future topic or a question, you can text us at 615-861-9503. And if you would like to talk to someone about spiritual or mental health issues, you can email our care pastor, Sam Barnhart, at sam@journeytn.com.